Many of these birds are coming from South America. They begin their migration based on day length. They see the days are getting longer. They fly across the Gulf of Mexico and they gradually work their way back here. By the time they get here, they're behind all these leaves that are already out, especially on a spring like this. There's a lot of variability year to year. And then we have continued that research by looking at when they're breeding, and we're finding that they're breeding early over time. And so this most recent article is asking whether or not they're breeding early because they're arriving a little bit earlier, or are they initiating breeding much earlier after arrival. In order to catch up, because they're not able to catch up during migration, they can only advance that a little bit, they catch up by breeding much earlier, more quickly after they arrive, especially in springs like this, which are earlier than many springs. So Powdermill Nature Reserve, where we are, is part of Carnegie Museum of Natural History. It was a land that was initially donated to the museum and then grew over time. And it's a wonderful living portion of the museum. It is a typical habitat for southwestern Pennsylvania in this Ridge Valley network. And it's a great place to see what birds are migrating through or breeding or wintering. So we study birds here year-round at Powdermill Nature Reserve and the Avian Research Center. Powdermill as a whole is over 2,000 acres, and the Avian Research Center only is 2.5 acres. And it was initially farmland and began growing up into this scrubby habitat that you see. And we work very hard to maintain this scrub habitat because it's important habitat. What's incredible about Powdermill is this consistency. We have been collecting this data in the same manner it has been collected for so long. And when they began collecting the data, it was to try to understand maybe how long birds live, where they went, and trying to understand about their biology here, when they grow their feathers, how habitat might affect that. And many of those questions are still relevant today. It's very complicated, challenging to follow these birds on the migration and understand how all the changes to the habitats, both locally and then globally, are affecting the birds. And so we have this data set that we're continuing to build off to be able to try and ask questions that we may not have thought of yet. And at the same time, while we have the birds in the hand, we can ask other questions, looking at whether or not birds have Lyme disease and how they might be transporting it, looking at how they perceive patterned glass, also putting new technology, transmitters on these birds to follow them in migration. So we can both use the old and the new at the same time to get a better perspective of birds, how they fit in with this world.